Right, thank you very much. Okay, can I ask Cheryl to call for the Sethering and intimate any apologies, please?
Thanks, Chair. I'll just run through the Sethering if you can intimate your attendance. Councillor Graham Barton.
Yep, yeah.
Councillor John McGee.
Yep.
Councillor Ellen Friel.
I'm here, Cheryl, thank you.
Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
Got apologies from Councillor Maureen Mackay. Councillor Peter Maben.
Present. Thank you.
Councillor Claire Maitland. Here. Councillor William Lennox.
Yeah.
I've got apologies from Councillor Billy Crawford. Councillor Neil Watts.
Present, Cheryl.
Councillor Drew Filson.
Yep.
Got apologies from Councillor Jennifer Hogg and Councillor Elaine Stewart. It's gone. No, don't see her there.
Just to confirm, Councillor Stewart, I just saw her there about 5 minutes ago. Yep, there she is. Councillor Stewart's there. Can you hear us, Councillor Stewart and Councillor Watts? Okay.
Yes, David, I can hear you. Yeah, fine.
I think Councillor Stewart's. Okay.
On that one.
Obviously, as we've discussed at this committee before, the committee needs to proceed, and members who have opted to come in remotely for whatever reason will need to persevere. We haven't started the hearing yet, so we'll just keep a tab on Councillor Stewart, but we can't overcome technical difficulties at the other end.
Thank you, David. Okay, then we'll move on to item 1 on the agenda, and that's any declarations of interest. Don't see any in the room, and I do not see any hands up online. So thank you very much. We're going to move on to item 2 on the agenda, and that is the hearing procedure. And Cheryl, could you take us through that one, please?
Thanks, Chair. Yep, page 3 of your papers highlights the hearing procedure. In paragraph 1 details that the Chief Governance Officer or representative will give details of the application. Thereafter, the objectors will present their objections to committee in support of the written objections. They will be given 5 minutes each. In this case, we have 7 objectors this morning. Paragraph 3 highlights that members of the committee may ask questions of the objectors on the submissions that they've made. And just to note that this is not to be taken as an opportunity to comment on the merits or otherwise of the planning application. Thereafter, the applicant or their agent will speak for a maximum of, in this case today, 20 to 25 minutes. And after that, the members of the committee may ask questions of the applicant on the submissions made. And also again to note that it's not to be taken as an opportunity to comment on the merits or otherwise of this plan application. The hearing will then close and all parties will be asked to withdraw to the public gallery, and the committee will consider the application. At this stage, the Chief Governance Officer or representative will address the committee and give appropriate clarification on any issues raised during the hearing. And following that, the committee will then make their decision. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Cheryl. Okay.
So just to clarify, Chair, in the context of the first application that we're about to get to, that as Cheryl's referred to, there were 7 objectors who'd intimated they wished to attend and be heard. 6 have been able to attend in the day. 1 has asked to be able to speak in support of their own objection and the 7th objection. Therefore, that gives us the 7 objectors at 5 minutes each. As set out in the process and as Cheryl identified, it's in the gift of the committee to agree in order to achieve a sense of balance, hence the opening it up to 20 to 25 minutes for the applicant to respond. The objectors in total having had up to 35 minutes. That deals with the timing of things, and as all parties are aware, although I wasn't till this morning, we now invite them to come up and address the committee from the table when we get to that point. Chair, there's just one other preliminary matter which hopefully won't take too long, but in essence, one of the objectors contacted us at the beginning of the week and advised of a late submission they wished to make in the form of an additional acoustics report, which they believe challenges, and I say they believe challenges, or draws into question the acoustics report submitted by the applicants. This is a late submission, given the stage the process was at and the report having already been issued to committee. It is therefore a matter for committee to determine whether or not to receive that late submission. During the course of the week, we have shared it with the applicant. The applicant has therefore had the chance to consider it and to respond. The applicant's position is that it is, and there's no dispute, it's a late objection. They recognise it's a matter for the committee. They've no wish to prolong matters by having a technical debate on its admissibility. They're happy if the committee is so minded to admit that and allow Mr Davis to address that late submission in the course of the hearing. They are happy simply to respond in kind in the course of the hearing. On that basis, and without getting the committee bogged down in technical matters, I would simply, and for the record, informally invite the committee to agree to hear Mr Davis on that late submission as part of the substantive hearing that's hopefully about to commence. If committee's happy with that, that lets the committee and all parties present focus on the substantive hearing and the merits of all the aspects of the application, rather than parties getting bogged down in one particular technical or procedural matter. It's not the best start to these kind of meetings. So if everybody's happy with that, then Mr Davis will be able to address the report and the applicant will be able to respond as part of the substantive hearing. So that would be my advice to the committee, is to agree to accept it for the minute, and then we can proceed.
Members, are we happy to accept that?
Agreed.
I think that's unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, then on that basis, we can move on to item 3 on the agenda, which is planning application number 23/0370/PP, and that's an application for planning permission for erection of operation of a maturation warehousing facility, spirit supply with adjoining office and all associated ancillary development, including demolition of existing farm buildings at South Drumboy Farm, Glasgow Road, Kilmarnock, East Ayrshire. That's KA3 6EU. And it's already been pointed out that we're going to have 7 objectors at 5 minutes each and 20 to 25 minutes for the applicant. So at this stage, sorry. At this stage, I'm going to open up the hearing procedure and hand over to Fiona, who's going to take us through this.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. I can advise that planning permission is sought for this development. Members will have noted that there was an opportunity to visit the site this week, and I can confirm that members met on site yesterday, which is Thursday. We spent time reviewing views over to the application site, reviewed perspectives from the A77 and Kingswell Road. I can also confirm that members were advised prior to the opening of the site visit that the purpose of the site visit was to review the physical features of the site and its surroundings and review the proposed plans, and not to discuss the merits of the case. Before I refer to the slides showing plans and photos of the site, I can advise that the application site covers 34 hectares, wholly located within the rural area near Floke to the north of the district boundary. The site is within the Rural Protection Area and is currently agricultural rural land with farm buildings to the northwest and plantation woodland to the southern boundary. Further details are outlined in your report, starting at paragraph 4 on page 6. Procedural background to the application is also given, starting at paragraph 17 on page 7, noting the pre-application consultation process and the environmental impact screenings that were undertaken as required. Proposals seek to erect and operate a maturation warehousing facility with adjoining office, spirit supply and associated ancillary development, including the demolition of the existing South Drumboy farm buildings. Proposal is for the whisky products to be brought on site in bulk road tankers and casks of whisky products to be filled and retained on site during their maturation period. Road tankers will also be filled for export and transported to other sites, with the product being transported coming from the casks stored on site for maturation. Cask whisky products will also arrive on site for processing and storage in the warehouses. Once fully operational, there will be 40 staff based on site, 20 staff associated with the office and 20 staff associated with the operational site, rising to 45 net jobs, taking into consideration the wider effects within the supply chain. Operation of the site is stated as Monday to Friday, with the hours of operation given at paragraph 27 on page 8. Specific detail about the proposal starts at paragraph 28 on page 9, noting 14 warehouses storing up to 20,000 barrels, office supply building, external yard, tank farm, processing building behind the office. Parking is provided with a security hut and substation. The phasing details for the overall development is set out at the last bullet point above paragraph 29 on page 11 and notes an 8-phase development. Onwards from paragraph 30, a summary of the applicant's supporting information is provided, which extends from page 11 to page 34. I'm going to turn to some slides now to illustrate some plans, elevations and contextual images, together with photographs taken from the case officer's site visit. As ever, members, please let me know if you wish me to change slides as we progress, and indeed during the hearing process I can change those as well. So, We got that one okay? Yeah. Okay, so here at the very top of the plan, my members, we have the application site. You can see the sort of maroon red boundary within the large red circle just to identify the site. You can see it's accessing straight onto the A77 with the blue road signifying the M77. Further down south from the site members, you can see that we have Fenwick. We also have Waterside and Moscow. And then further down in the bottom of the map, we have Kilmarnock settlement itself. That plan's really just to show you the context of where the site is in relation to the settlements that we have in this part of the district. This is just zoomed in a little bit more, members, to show you in relation to Fenwick and also in relation to Waterside. So you can see the site at the top right of the screen, and then you can see at the bottom of the screen, you can see Fenwick, and to the right of Fenwick, there is also Waterside off the A719. As ever, members, we put in the local development plan maps for you. You can see that the site is identified within the rural protection area in the East Ayrshire Local Development Plan of 2017. And here's the plan in relation to the rural area and the rural protection area in the local development plan 2. Here we have the proposed site plan. Up in the northwest here, you can see the car parking proposals, members, that we showed you yesterday, where the farm buildings are at the moment for South Drumboy. Further south, you can see the office building, the tank farm. You can see the access into the main part of the site. And you've obviously got the existing access where we parked yesterday, members, on the A77 into the existing building for the car parking area. You'll see the landscaping at the front, and you'll see the area of peat down here, etc. as well, members. You'll see the layout of the 14 warehouses and the landscaping round about the site. Moving on to this plan, members, in a little bit more detail, you can see the indication of the planting, the coniferous plantations. The area in red is the woodlands clearance, and we clarified that for you yesterday. You can see the suds pond here, members, over towards the southeastern boundary, and you can see a suds pond there too, and you can see the area of wetland, etc., in the area of peat. This plan is just the site entrance plan to show you the arrangements at the entrance. You can see the access there with the entrance feature. You've got the office buildings, Spirit Supply, etc., and then you move into the warehouse zone. Elevations at the site entrance, members, architectural drawings for you. We do have some images that will come in a second. These are the warehouses, members. This is the security cabin detail with the gates into the site. Boundary treatment details. Excuse me. There's the layouts of the blocks, and you can see the surface water treatment details. Here we have some images, members, for you. Just looking from the A71 into the site entrance, you'll see the office building there. You'll see the tank farm at the back there, and the gates here, and the security cabins in here, and you'll see the landscaping detail there as well. Just a bit closer up, you can see the entrance feature, just the sort of retention there. Again, A77. Looking south from sort of a more northerly point. And this is just the access as vehicles are entering and leaving. You can see how this is behind the sort of office building, the main entrance behind the security gate. And you can see just obviously the vehicles, etc., coming in as an image and leaving into the warehouse zone. More of an aerial view for you, members, you can see. See the grass, the sort of grass roof, this sort of planted seeded roof at the front there. And you can see the area of peat and wetland down here. This is just the phasing, members, as to see the phasing is actually detailed in the report. as I've said to you at the start of the presentation, you can just see the phased development of the warehouses as things move on through the 8 phases. It's just the tank details. Some levels details there for you members to see how it's to be set into the site. You can see the change in levels in CC, particularly in level C, section C and D. Some images that have been taken from the applicant's assessment in terms of the landscape. And that's actually looking back from Kingswell Road. The bottom photos are once the landscape mitigation has started to mature, members. Mitigation looking up towards the site from the southern part on the A77 with the cycle lane that we stood at yesterday. And this is looking down from the very north of the site. Actually looking further down past at Harelaw over to the site. These some images looking back. So you have the images at the front and then you have the wireframes at the bottom there, members, with the indication. This is a cumulative plan, members, that we have prepared for you. This is the application site up here, and you can see the details of the other developments that are with Scottish Government at the present time. You can see here, you've got the green hydrogen production facility here. You've got the link road, etc. You've got the turbines down here of the wind farm. I'm going to pass you on to my colleague Craig Thomas, who's just going to run through the site photos whilst I press on from photo to photo for him when he's ready.
Thanks, Fiona. There's a number of photos, so bear with me. The first photo was taken on, on the A77, looking towards the northwestern corner of the site. You can see South Drumboy Farm. This is the existing access that will be retained for the staff car parking area. And then we move on to the next. Is it taken from the same spot? You can see the designated cycleway looking north from the site. You can see in the distance the properties of North Drumboy. Yeah, the next one is again taken from the same spot on the A77, looking southwards. You can see the site there on the left. In the distance, there's the white building, the B-listed Kingswell building, which is in the central. It's difficult to see on that photo, but it's in the central part of the site. And moving on, just walking down the A77 a bit centrally of the site, looking back towards South Drumboy Farm. You can see the woodland that's located along the northern boundary of the site. Again, this is taken from the same spot. Looking further into the site, you can see the topography of the site, the existing landscaping along the northern boundary and some of the buildings there of South Drumboy Farm. Again, from the same spot, swinging around, looking centrally to the east, you can see the areas of woodland to the north, the sloping nature of the site, and also the plantation woodland to the south, part of which will be removed as part of the proposal. Next one. Again, from the similar spot, looking south, you can centrally again is the B-listed Kingswell building beyond those row of pine trees in the middle of the image. Next image is in similar spot. You can see the designated cycle lane. Looking southwards, you have the M77 on the far right part of the photograph image. This image was taken at the southwestern corner of the site, where the boggy peat area is located. It's looking southwards along the A77. Again, this is taken from the same spot, starting to look around the site towards the east. You can see the nature of the site, the existing vegetation. Again, taken from the same site, looking further towards the northeastern part of the site. You can see the sloping nature of the site and the existing vegetation, woodland along the northern boundary there. Again, from the same spot, looking northward this time towards South Drumboy Farm. Sorry. Again, that's taken at the southwestern corner, looking towards the M77 beyond. The next one was taken from inside South Drumboy Farm, looking along the north. You can see the existing vegetation and existing buildings within the South Drumboy Farm. This is taken further up the northern boundary of the site, where you can see the existing woodland, which will be retained as part of the proposal. This woodland is in fact located within the application site. I think a number of representations said it was located out with, but it is located within the red line site. This is further along the northern boundary of the site, looking back towards South Drumboy Farm. Again, the existing woodland to be retained. Again, northern boundary, the higher points of the site, looking down towards the A77, and beyond which you can see the M77. Again, from the same spot, swinging around, give a wider image of the site. You can just see the B-listed Kingswell building there in the left-hand side of the photo beyond those pine trees. And I've taken a closer image just to show the B-listed Kingswell building, sorry. Again, further swinging around in the central part of the site, looking towards the existing plantation that's located along the south. It's a similar photo. Again, at the highest point, we've seen a similar image to this, but this is looking back towards the A77 and the M77 beyond. Gives you a bit of an idea of the nature of the site and the sloping nature. This photo is looking directly towards the plantation. This area in the foreground will be the area removed, while the area in the distance will be retained as part of the proposal. Again, at the high point of the site, looking towards the south. Similar photo looking towards the plantation. And a final one, I think, from that spot looking towards the southwestern corner. 63, yeah. This photo is taken from the eastern corner of the site, from Kingswell Road, looking up, that's the northern, looking towards the northern boundary. This image is taken from the same spot, swinging further around, looking west, sorry. Again, from similar spot, looking along Kingswell Road, with the B-listed Kingswell building in the central left part of the site, surrounded by, you can see the surrounded by trees there. existing plantation. Yeah, this is further along Kingswell Road, looking towards the northern boundary. Again, from the same spot, looking towards the existing plantation. Again, taken from Kingswell Road, looking towards the B-listed Kingswell building. The application site's further to the right of this photo. Yeah, this image is taken from near the drive of Kingswell to the east, looking over the application site. Again, taken from the same spot, looking further west, swinging around to the A77. And then the final photo is again from the same spot, looking west towards the A77. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. Hopefully members, I appreciate there's a lot of photographs there, but hopefully that's given you a good idea just about the scale and the nature of the site. Turning back to the report, consultations were undertaken. The responses that we have received start at paragraph 57 and page 35. We overall have got no consultees that have objected to the application with the exception of the community councils that are stated. Matters have been further clarified with statutory consultees such as Nature Scot, SEPA, Ayrshire Roads Alliance and Health and Safety Executive, and matters raised otherwise by consultees have already been addressed or can be addressed by planning conditions and or advisory notes should members wish to grant consent. Representatives from Environmental Health are also here in attendance today if members have specific questions regarding any environmental health matters. No objections have been received from the consultee, as I've said, which haven't been resolved other than the community councils. The comments from the community councils are contained within the representation section of the report. In relation to primary consultees, I think it's important just to run through the comments of those consultees in relation to the sort of relevant matters. ARA have got no objections to subject to conditions starting at page 35, paragraph 57. ARA Flooding have got no objections in terms of flood risk at page 45 on paragraph 61. East Ayrshire Council's Environmental Health Service has got no objections as at page 38, paragraph 59, noting advice given that the applicant has satisfactorily addressed private water supply matters that were queried by Environmental Health, have addressed noise matters to the satisfaction of Environmental Health, and have submitted a satisfactory odour management plan. SEPA has no objections as at paragraph 60 and page 40, and noting SEPA that are satisfied regarding flood risk, the control of major accident hazards, foul and surface water drainage, private water supplies, and in relation to peat, SEPA note that the following consideration of the peat management plan and the net carbon statement, SEPA note that there will be some CO2 loss due to unavoidable peat disturbance, but there are mitigating factors to be taken into consideration. These are such that all excavated peat from the development will be used in the creation of wetland habitats by drain filling and in landscaping proposals. SEPA also refer to the applicant's countrywide participation in a peatland regeneration initiative, which is called the Peatland Water Sanctuary Programme, which SEPA say hopefully goes some way into mitigating against peat disturbance. The original design has also been altered to avoid an area of deep peat, indicating in SEPA's view the applicant's willingness to minimise environmental disturbance. SEPA then referred to the matter of volatile organic compounds and referred to the conclusion of the Scottish Government report, and SEPA have chosen not to provide any further detailed opinion or comments. Nature Scot, as noted at page 50, paragraph 70, have no objections from them who are and Nature Scot were previously SNH. Nature Scot comment on peatland and carbon-rich soil, offering no objections. At page 50, Nature Scot advised that they are pleased to note the revised design, avoiding entirely the Class 1 peat, and note it will be enhanced by proposed tree removal. Nature Scot note that the other area of Class 1 peat, that this has been significantly modified by long-term grazing and artificial drainage, so that it has no longer can be described as priority peat. Overall, Nature Scot advised they welcome the peat management plan proposals for the reuse of peat to the creation of wetland habitat and agree with the methods. Nature Scot have no objections in terms of protected species, birds and biodiversity, and note that mitigation and enhancements are proposed for affected species. Turning to the representation process as outlined in the report, starting at paragraph 74 and page 52, we have a total of 34 objections. We have 2 letters of support. Taking in turn to briefly summarise these, objectors to the application note the impact on public health, pollution control, flooding impacts, drainage impacts, lack of EIA, lack of policy compliance, effect on peat and destruction of peat and net carbon, hazardous substances matters, cumulative and visual impact, impact on the rural protection area and the rural setting, impact on climate crisis, biodiversity, the availability of alternative sites, heritage impacts on listed buildings and archaeology, economic impacts and community benefit, neighbour notification concerns, traffic and road impacts, tourism and active travel, and Scottish whisky and foreign ownership. All objections are responded to in the report, so I won't outline each response individually, but I will advise members that the application has been screened for EIA and has been concluded this is not required. The public consultation process required under the Planning Act was undertaken appropriately, and should members wish to grant, appropriate conditions can be incorporated regarding traffic, pollution control, drainage, flooding, and mitigate against construction period. We have detailed proposals for peat management, protected species, biodiversity, drainage, water supply, and heritage impacts. All these matters have been fully assessed. Economic impacts and potential is noted, and many of the consultees cover the issues raised in this regard by objecting parties. Visual impact can be justified, and climate matters have been addressed with primary statutory consultees not objecting, and justification and clarification having been lodged. It is not considered that there will be an unacceptable cumulative impact, noting the site and rural area characteristics. The supporters identify economic benefits, compliance with MPF4, the applicant's sustainable practices, cohesive design and detailed landscape strategy, and the strategic transport location of the site. In terms of the development plan, MPF4 and the East Ayrshire Local Development Plan are currently relevant parts of the development plan. Sections 25 and 37.2 of the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act 97 as amended require that planning applications be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. In the case of this application, the relevant parts of the development plan are MPF4 and the East Ayrshire Local Development Plan. MPF4 takes priority where there's an incompatibility between the adopted LDP and MPF4. Minerals Local Development Plan is not relevant to this application. Policies of both documents have been considered in detail within the report. The LDP2 is nearing adoption but has not yet been adopted, but it is currently a significant material consideration as it comprises the most recently approved Council-approved planning policy for East Ayrshire. The proposal has been assessed against the development plan and considered on balance to be in compliance overall. The design and layout as proposed is acceptable and will not adversely impact on the rural locale. The development plan includes policies and objectives in support of the rural economy and development that will contribute positively to such policy. It is considered that the proposed development has locational requirements that can be more readily accommodated in a rural location than an urban setting. The proposal has demonstrated a need in this location. It is considered to make a substantial contribution to the local, regional, and national economy, being a proposal that supports the Scottish whisky industry. The proposal will have long-term sustainable economic benefits and has entailed an assessment of alternative sites with environmental and transport impacts. Proposed development will not have a significant adverse impact on the visual amenity of the area or residential amenity of receptors in the vicinity, will not give rise to an unacceptable traffic hazard, and will not result in unacceptable loss or impact on ecological habitats or species. It is recognised that development is of a substantial scale. The proposal has been designed sympathetically so it can be absorbed by the rural landscape within which it will sit. The siting of the buildings will not significantly impact the level of amenity currently enjoyed by those residential properties in the vicinity. It is considered that the proposal is acceptable in terms of landscape impact and visual amenity. Post-development is likely to give an economic boost to East Ayrshire, both through the construction period and operational, and it will provide additional employment. All relevant matters have been taken into account when appraising this application, including all material considerations. This includes the consultation responses, which mainly suggest that they support the application. The position set out in the Scottish Government Review on non-methane volatile organic compounds, which provides clear direction in such matters, and the general overall compliance with LDP2. Whilst the objections raise a range of valid planning considerations, none are considered to be of sufficient weight that would indicate the application should be refused. Contrary to the development plan, planning history of the site does not pose any issues, and overall material considerations support the conclusions in respect to the development plan and do not, on balance, indicate a contrary view. Just on the basis of the report, we feel that overall the application is appropriate in terms of development plan. We also consider that the main other material considerations are overall and supportive. On that basis, the application is recommended for approval, subject to relevant planning conditions. However, I would refer you members to the recommendation at paragraph 3 on page 5, that the applicant planning committee approved the planning application with conditions as stated in Appendix 1, but the issue of the decision notice be withheld until the requirements of the Scottish Government notification are satisfied. Just before I pass back to the chair to open the hearing process, if I can ask members just to turn to page 253, condition 15. There's a very small typo in that condition. Condition 15 should actually just read condition 15. There is no A and B part to that condition. And in the third line, the word by should actually be B. It is quite a small correction, and I hope members would be willing to accept it should they decide to grant consent. Thank you very much, and back to yourself, Chair.
No, thank you very much, Fiona and Craig, for taking us through that. Members, we're now moving on to parts 2 and 3 of the hearing. Part 2 is where the objectors and other agents will present their objections to the committee in support of their written objections. And after the objectors have given their 5 minutes time, could you please be open for questions from members? So just ask you to stay in position. Okay. I'm going to call the objectors one at a time up to the table here. And as again, you'll have 5 minutes each. So the first person I'm going to call is Mr. Elliot Davis. Mr. Davis, is this going to take a length of time? Mr. Davis, I'm going to start the 5 minutes now. Thanks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Elliot Davis. I reside at Kingswell Farm, which is also the location of Ecos Cables, an award-winning hi-fi cable company. On the 14th of March, I attended a meeting at the Fenwick Community Council where I discussed and expressed my deep concerns about what I perceive to be serious flaws in the applicant's noise report undertaken by a company called Mabbott, so much so that I commissioned my own report. I won't refer to that report today, but I can assure you the Mabbott report does not comply with British Standard 4142. At that meeting, Councillor McGee suggested that I send my report to Chief Governance Officer Mitchell, which I duly did last weekend. One of the major concerns within the Mabbott report is the fact that in regard to monitoring at Kingswell, no monitoring was done at Kingswell. This was in violation of an agreement in place between East Ayrshire's Environmental Health Department and Mabbott on behalf of Suntory. They violated that agreement. The monitoring for Kingswell did not take place at Kingswell. It took place hundreds of meters away, in a forest within the development area by a stream. In other words, the Mabbott noise figures for Kingswell do not represent noise at Kingswell. On the contrary, they have been inflated, and I believe that was deliberate because it allows Beam Suntory to massively increase the noise at Kingswell, at their factory, more than would normally be agreed. Mabbott's report talks about noise, disturbing noise coming from the M77 and from the A77 and from a quarry. I can assure you, we moved to East Ayrshire to site our factory, to site our evaluation centre at Kingswell because of the quiet that we have at Kingswell. But the figures that Mabbott presented are so pumped up, and they contradict a noise report undertaken on 2012 by Scottish Power Renewables. Similar background noise, but the Mabbott figures are 10 times higher than the sound that the Scottish Power Renewables had for the same location in 2007. Those figures, in my opinion, were there deliberately to increase the noise on behalf of Beam Suntory, and I think that is a serious manipulation, and I think it's something that we have to consider. Now, you have to consider that ECOS cables requires quiet. You have to consider that the noise that Mabbott claim come from the M77 and the A77 and a quarry nearby do not actually exist at Kingswell. And I say to you, members of the committee, come to Kingswell, come to our evaluation room. You'll hear it's quiet. When we're doing our evaluations, it has to be quiet, so much so that we literally turn off the central heating system. But remember what I said, Mabbott violated their agreement. They pumped up the figures. Here's the problem. No one at East Ayrshire picked up on this serious flaw. No one in any department that I'm aware of picked up on the fact that Beam Suntory's representatives had inflated the noise figures. How can that be? How was that allowed to slip through the net? And I think that's a serious omission. And I think, quite frankly, it calls into question the veracity of this application. There's an issue here about honesty. Something slipped through the net.
Can I just get a gentle reminder? It's just, if we could just wrap up for the next 30 seconds, thanks, just to keep it fair.
Sorry, I'm only at 3:50.
I did start the timer.
Ridiculous.
Don't fall out over a minute, Chair. I think through you, Chair, Mr. Davis, I think everyone in the room recognises that the bigger the planning application, the more issues it gives rise to, the more issues there are, the more scope there is for a difference of opinion. And sometimes people get very emotive about it. But the Chair did ask and indicate he was going to start the clock at a particular time. However, rather than compromise the ship for the Hayton Porther Tar, then the Chair and the members are quite happy for you to finish, but they would wish you to focus on the core of your submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so one of the things that I'm concerned about is in regard to diligence and procedure. My understanding that on a development of this magnitude, East Ayrshire would normally do their own noise report, but that wasn't carried out on this occasion. So here we have the problem. ECOS is an award-winning cable company. We garner fabulous reviews all over the world. This is because we are able to evaluate in the quiet conditions that I've referred to. But I tell you honestly, ladies and gentlemen, this prestigious hi-fi cable company that East Ayrshire can be justifiably proud of will not survive with this noise level. We will not be able to exist and properly evaluate our cables with the noise that's been put forward here. I want to go on to a recently published planning report. The Chief Governance Officer, Mr. Mitchell, said, and I quote, "Development proposals that are likely to raise unacceptable noise issues will not be supported." Well, I say to you honestly, the noise issues that I've just referred to will be wholly unacceptable to ECOS cables. We will not be able to survive as a going concern because we will not be able to evaluate our cables properly. And the last thing I'm going to say, in the same report, again from the Chief Governance Officer, baseline sound measurements were carried out to quantify the prevailing sound climate at the closest noise-sensitive properties. Well, no, they weren't. ECOS is the closest noise-sensitive property, and as I just pointed out, Mabbott didn't do their noise reporting from anywhere near Kingswell. They did it from hundreds of metres away. So I say to you,
Mr Davis, through you, I don't want to repeat things, but even on your clock, you must have exceeded 5 minutes
Okay.
by now, so let's be fair.
fair enough. Thank you. Thank you.
Chair, through you as well, I just want to draw the attention of all parties present to stage 6 of the hearing process, which allows myself or colleagues to give appropriate clarification or response to any issues raised during the hearing. And I can confirm that the matters raised by Mr Davis have been reviewed by Planning and Environmental Health colleagues in the course of this week. And at stage 6 of the hearing, both services will be quite happy to give a response to the matters you've heard. That doesn't stop you asking Mr Davis any questions you wish to ask just now, but at the same time, the officers will respond at stage 6 in the process, as I'm sure you wish to hear from them. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Okay, members, I'm going to open up for questions for Mr Davis. Got any? Don't see him in the room or online. Okay, then thank you very much, Mr
Thank
Davis.
you.
If you could
Thank
turn
you.
to the
Thank you.
public gallery. Okay. The next objector we've got is Miss Rachel Connor. If you'd like to come forward, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, I believe the flood risk from this whisky bond has been grossly underestimated. This proposal will result in over 31 acres, 12.8 hectares of impermeable surfaces on a rural hillside in an area with very high rainfall. That area is equivalent to 20 football pitches. Nowhere in the applicant's document is off-site downstream flooding assessed. Nowhere is there any consideration of the cumulative flood risk from the adjacent and additional 33 acres of impermeable surface from the Whiteley Energy Project. These will both drain into the Fenwick Water and thence to the River Irvine in Kilmarnock. NPF 4 and local development planning policies require there to be assessment of off-site flood risks. But in the planning report, the council considers that these important policies are simply not applicable. How can that be right? Climate change is increasing flooding events. We know that Kilmarnock floods almost every year. Who could forget the shoppers evacuated by boat from Asda in 2014 at Christmas? Or worse still, the people killed this year in floods. NPF 4 policies are supposed to address flood risk changes from climate change. Specifically, those policies say development proposals will seek to minimise the area of impermeable surfaces and will not increase the risk of surface water flooding to others. The Council's draft LDP was significantly strengthened by Scottish ministers to encompass these requirements such that the Council will take a precautionary approach to flood risk from all sources and will promote flood avoidance in the first instance. The LDP goes on to say that a proposal will be supported only if it does not lead to an increase in the probability of flooding on or out with the site or a need for future flood protection schemes. So to be able to calculate robust drainage measures to cope with climate change and rainfall predicted by SEPA to increase by 41%, you need to start with accurate baseline figures. So why has this applicant used figures that are 1/3 less than local rainfall figures? These crucial rainfall figures have not even been checked on the applicant's documents. Why has storm drainage modelling been based on only 30 minutes of rainfall from 2013 in the summer from Region 2, wherever that is? Everyone else knows that flooding mostly occurs in the winter, with rain falling on already saturated ground, which overwhelms drainage measures. This raises serious questions that this massive development's drainage proposals will not only not cope with current rainfall, but will be insufficient to cope with climate change increased rainfall. This will result in significant surface water runoff from the site, causing major impacts to our environment and our communities. SEPA and Ayrshire Roads Alliance are tasked with assessing flood risk. As you heard, neither agency objected to this application on the basis there would be no risk of on-site flooding to the development itself or to the adjacent A77 or M77. But crucially, and read the reports, neither SEPA nor ARA have assessed the potential for off-site downstream flooding. Creating many acres of impermeable surfaces in one water catchment will increase the risk of downstream flash flooding. That is undisputed. Despite this fact, national and local planning policies designed to protect lives, homes and businesses from increasing flood risks are disregarded and deemed not applicable. The risk of flood impacts on innocent people
Mrs.
are
Connors, just a reminder,
simply
just
being ignored.
wrap up, please. Thanks.
One of the reasons I wrote to Scottish ministers requesting that this application be called in was because of my concerns that flooding impacts on others were not being addressed by the applicant. My request and that of other people was heard, and ministers issued the highly unusual direction that if this application is approved by this committee, that decision will be scrutinised. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions? It's not in the room or online. Thank you very much.
Just to say again, Chair, that planning colleagues will address such matters at stage 6. I'm sure members will want to hear the response to that at that stage.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Connor. If you just return to the public gallery, and the next person we're going to call up is Mr. Michael Lydon. No, sorry, it's Greta Roberts. Apologies. And again, it's 5 minutes, Greta.
So just to say that RPA, if you don't mind the abbreviation, it's the Rural Protection Area, as I know you know. Thank you. From your site visit, you'll be aware that this site is on Fenwick Moor within our approved rural protection area. This was extended considerably in the new local plan due to pressure of development. This area has always been in the RPA. Its purpose defined in your glossary in the local plan as protecting areas of countryside around settlements and other areas under pressure for development from sporadic and inappropriate development in order to protect the rural setting of settlements concerned and the rural area in general. I emphasise that. Fenwick Moors, their covenanting association with Fenwick protect much more. They are the gateway into Ayrshire from Green Glasgow. The Welcome to Ayrshire's Holiday County sign on the A77 here, as you look right over the Ayrshire lowlands to Arran and to Galloway Hills, has been stolen. It is clear that East Ayrshire will have to rely more on tourism rather than guarding sites while whisky sleeps and earns money for its owners. I must add that this development is an investment for Beam Suntory, not to East Ayrshire Council nor its people. Up to 40 jobs in 10 plus years. I suspect Hell, a wedding venue nearby, employs just as many for events. Nearby, our community fought off turbines at Glen Outher and for a data centre just west on the other side of the M77. No extension of an industrial landscape there yet. East Ayrshire Council's incorrect response to Beam Suntory's requested removal of this site from the RPA said it only applied to housing, so there was no merit in amending the RPA. How wrong was East Ayrshire Council in not requiring an EIA at the start? I wonder why the hurry. The reporter for the local plan declined to alter the RPA here, as it not been through strategic environmental assessment. So in the RPA it remains. It's also subject to reporters modifying IND2, allowing small-scale new business in such areas only when they contribute and support local farming, are suitably scaled and sited, designed in keeping with the area's character, with a specific locational need with no other suitable sites. This site fails all criteria. It's not up to locals to suggest sites. The local plan has shown zoned many industrial much industrial land, but apparently is trying to lure Beam Suntory by suggesting it could fit into the growth deal. I think that the criteria for this company was to find unused, cheap and available land and a puzzlingly keen local authority. Emissions, in my objection, I quoted the experience of living near the Chivas whisky bonds near Beath, now on their 4th extension. How can your council dismiss evidence of harm, black mould, etc., on homes, trees, animals, washing as not being material considerations? If that was the case, then planners could never take future impacts such as flooding, fire, or even failure into account. NPF policy 23 health and safety, council says doesn't impact. No wonder they dismissed evidence from whisky bonds not to be a material consideration, even suggesting black mould nuisance is a private legal matter. Peat, the site is peat, some blanket bog and peat-rich soils. Nature Scotland have got it wrong. They know that peat is a priority habitat with priority ecology and birds on it. Now the approved local plan has been improved. It says there's a presumption against disturbance or removal of class 1, 2 and 5 soils.
So just
and you saw it.
There's 1 minute left. Thanks.
All right. And you saw it on the slides. I was just going to say visual impact. It was required, as you have heard, for the solar farm proposal on this site some 10 years ago, as there would be significant adverse impact on the area. And that was when solar panels would only be 3 meters high and tilted. This time you've got buildings up to 11 meters. So what is the positive legacy mentioned in this report? I would say a very dangerous precedent, building industry in a supposedly protected rural area where there's no site-specific need. How dare the council define the RPA as a tool for just managing residential development and not being applicable to non-residential matters? That is not the case. Read the glossary. Please refuse this development. It can't satisfy IND in the rural protection area, nor any 11 presuming against disturbance and removal of peat. It can't support net zero objectives, nor the precautionary principle on fragile habitats,
Okay,
nor health and
I'll give you
safety,
an extra
nor the
20
growth plan.
seconds if-
Thank you very much for your
Thank you very
indulgence.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for Greta? No. Well, thank you very much. Who's going next? Okay, could I call Mr. Michael Taylor? Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and councillors, for allowing me to make further comment at your hearing. I will address the topic of Ayrshire, also known as evaporative emissions, non-methane volatile organic compounds, and I'll simply refer to them as VOCs. I do not consider myself an objector. I've had a long association with the Scotch whisky industry on environmental matters and have contributed to providing solutions to some complex issues. I'm a solid supporter of the industry and proud of its iconic status globally. It has not been my intention to prevent this proposed development, but to help inform the evaluation process through positive contribution. Evaporative emissions during the maturation process is deserving of consideration since it can harm human health and the wider environment, but to date it has been largely overlooked. This is a new area of study, and as the industry grows, so does its importance. Why do these emissions occur? How much spirit is lost from the cask, and can it be mitigated or reduced? Answering these questions will have a positive impact on human and environmental health and ensure sustainable use of resources. An offer to contribute my research findings was made free of charge without prejudice to the applicant Beam Suntory, Fenwick Community Council and East Ayrshire Council simultaneously. Fenwick Community Council accepted the offer of support. The applicant rejected engagement out of hand, and East Ayrshire Council acted appropriately and invited submissions for inclusion in the application process for full consideration. Contrary to what has been suggested by the applicant, the Scottish Government commissioned a report titled, and please excuse me for this, Review of the Human Health and Environmental Impacts of NMVOCs, that's Ayrshire, emissions from malt whisky facilities. This did not give the matter a clean bill of health, far from it. The report listed 8 recommendations, but the Scottish Government has so far been unwilling to implement them. This is unfortunate, since to do so would allow local authorities to make informed judgments and apply appropriate conditions to developments such as this. For example, boundary monitoring of ethanol in Ayrshire. The warehouses proposed for this development are massive structures. They are not inert. They will actively emit an organic solvent, ethanol, every day and night, possibly for up to 100 years. It's a time scale that is quite hard to fathom, which I'm sure will weigh as a heavy responsibility on the planning committee when deciding on this proposal. The South Rhomboy warehouses will be of the highest specification, most up-to-date design, and most importantly, will have enhanced ventilation of additional free open space on all outside walls, which ironically will increase the emission levels from the nominal 2% Ayrshire per year to 6, 8 or even 10%. This is from 2,500 tonnes to 10,000 tonnes of ethanol organic solvent annually for this development alone. The Ayrshire ethanol that is emitted from the casks within the warehouses will react with the outside environment in a myriad of ways. This includes humans' health and the wider natural environment. My submission was intended to initiate a quantifiable discussion on the topic by those charged with protecting communities and the environment. That's local authorities, SEPA, Environmental Health, the Scottish Government and others. However, East Ayrshire Council have been badly let down in this process. As with local authorities across Scotland, resources are stretched and officers can't be expected to know about such specific and emerging topics as VOC emissions. And when officers turn to those who are set up to support with knowledge and awareness, especially SEPA, it was not there. They simply shrugged and offered no comment. East Ayrshire Council has been asked to consider an application without being given the necessary resource to evaluate it properly and make an informed judgment on a matter that can affect human health.
Just 1 minute left, thanks.
Thank you. Finally, I invite the committee to ask themselves, if this application was submitted afresh today, would they expect their officers to request an environmental impact assessment? I would like to think you would. Also, given the potential impact on human health, the environment and global warming, it is reasonable that the Scottish Government should clarify guidance on how this and similar developments are evaluated in line with their own research and report and its recommendations. And the last 10 seconds. It is clear that the Council has not had sufficient support to arrive at a safe conclusion of what conditions, if any, should be applied to this development should it be approved. Therefore, it would be reasonable for the committee to request further guidance in order to arrive at a safe decision on VOC emitting development that will be active for the next 100 years and which may have a potential negative impact on people and place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. That was exactly on 5 minutes. So, members, do you have any questions for Mr. Taylor? No, there's nobody online. Thank you very much. I can ask Mr. Michael Lydon, thanks.
Hello everyone, my name's Michael Lydon. I live very locally. I live at North Drumboy Farm, which is 321 metres away from the main entrance of the site we're talking about. So what I want to do is try and give us some really local perspective on this. There's matters that come up for the surrounding area, but I'm a normal person who lives in a house and gets on with my job. And this is very, very much on our doorstep. I've listened earlier and I'm going to deviate a little bit from some of the things I was going to talk about. It was talked about earlier about a little misinformation or about a little lack of honesty. I noticed the maps, when the maps were put in the screen earlier, they're all taken with the site in the top right corner. Now, that seemed to avoid everything in the north. Now, I don't know why. There's a quarry there, and there's our home there. And there's also 2 other homes on the same site, and they're all 321 metres away. As we were sitting, we had a little look on phones and got our own pictures and things to compare to what you guys have been showing. And again, there's nothing from the north. There's pictures from Harelaw, which is in the south, maybe a mile and a half away. But there's nothing from the 3 homes where we are, 321 metres away. And I'm starting to question the honesty of that. Why is that? There's also a quarry there that's very, very close to us again. That's another half mile further on from us, if that. And I think that needs to be looked at further. Once I'm finished talking, I do have some pictures on a phone that I could show. I don't have facilities to do all this kind of stuff, but I think it would be quite beneficial to get some really local context of what I'm talking about there. Going back to kind of where I've set out that I wanted to talk about, I wanted to talk about site selection. This has been marketed as a non-residential area. Now, we've got 3 homes in my area, again, 321 metres away, which I don't think has been put over in this. There's another home, or another 2 homes the other side of the back of the hill. And Floke hasn't been mentioned again. And getting back to these pictures, Floke was nicely cut out of those pictures for some reason. I can't tell you why. But the 3 homes I can talk about is 300 and odd metres away. 9 people live in these homes, including some children. Move on to other things I'm concerned about in a very, very local context is the Ayrshire bacteria that we've heard about there. So that's a bacteria that grows in the ethanol. There's various studying and reading out there that shows as it falls on things, you get black mold everywhere and dangers to health. And I remind you, when we're talking about this, it's 300 odd metres away, which hasn't been put over to you. Other things I wanted to touch on was what I would call the blast zone. If there's an emergency, what happens? Like we're that close. So there's a lot of volatile chemicals there, and alcohol, which is flammable. What kind of explosion would you get at that kind of distance away? What kind of safeguards is there? There's children playing in the local area. They're not even playing in the confines of their own home. They are like normal kids out playing. They'll be metres away from that site at times. And if something happens, like what is the blast zone? I don't feel that's been identified. And I think that's a risk to my and other homes that I'm talking about just now.
That's 1 minute left, thanks.
It wouldn't be enough time. Aquifers is my main concern. Water, we're fed by a borehole. There is a report been put to you guys that is wrong. The borehole that we're fed by is 200 metres away, not 450 metres away. SEPA recommend 250 metres buffer for borehole water. And you've been informed the borehole is 450 metres away. It's 200 metres away or thereabouts. Other things I wanted to talk about briefly, and I'll try not to run over, I've skipped some things, is reassurance
Sorry,
of what.
it's not outrageous. It's just try out of fairness, and so that everybody gets a fair hearing.
Yeah.
We should try and limit it to the 5 minutes.
To be fair, we listened to you guys talking for quite, no, please. We listened to you guys talking for a long time, showing us a lot of pictures, and we're only given a few minutes to respond to that. And I would say that's quite unfair.
Through you, Chair. Sorry, Mr. Lydon, we'll stop the clock so you don't lose your last time. But I think just to a few pointers for all present, there is no statutory requirement to have a hearing at all. But like every other planning authority in Scotland, this council recognises that in the absence of a third-party right of appeal, it's absolutely fair and appropriate to have a hearing and allow anyone who wishes to be heard in respect of an application to be heard. We go to great lengths and we engage through colleagues in democratic services in advance of every committee to engage with all those who wish to be heard and to accommodate them. There does need to be a sense of balance. We have allowed 5 minutes, a total of 35 minutes for those who wish to speak. As you can see, the chair does not wish to be bringing down the clock and running this in some kind of time and motion study. The balance is to try and let people be heard, but we are upfront with people as to what time they would have, and it's a reasonable expectation that anyone coming to address this committee will accept that and work within the time they've been allocated. I said earlier that all planning applications give up a range of views. Sometimes they give up a range of emotive views, but what through the chair we would be asking for is everyone to conduct themselves in the same respectful manner as everyone else present. The council runs the hearing. The members haven't spoken at all, to be fair, Mr. Lydon, so I'm not sure about that comment. What I would say to try and give you some comfort is, as you may not be aware, that at least some of the members attended a site visit to the site on Thursday morning, so they are well conversant. And the fact of the float quarry is not a surprise to any members because it was, of course, consented by this planning committee. So the members are fully conversant with the quarry as well. So at the end of the day, we have an administrative process. We're trying not to guillotine people at 5 minutes and show respect and allow people to finish their submission, but it's not up for negotiation sitting there, Mr. Lydon. You have 5 minutes or so to make your point, and we're not here to debate the process. The process was set out and explained and clarified again this morning, so let's not turn this into something different with respect through you, Chair.
Thanks, David.
I'm sure we all understand we're looking for a fair balance of things.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
here.
I'm
So
trying to
I'd
do
be
the
grateful
same,
if you
and that's where my comments come from. The last few minutes of what I'm talking about, what I've got left, I want to talk about reassurance we've got in the event of a disaster in the area, a disaster with the water supply. If my water supply has been contaminated, that will render my home and the other 2 homes next to us uninhabitable. How can you have a home without a water supply? I repeat, our site is 320 odd metres away. I am worried that this, should it go ahead, I feel it's got certain points that are not covered. If it goes ahead, we will be facing this on our doorstep, a company that's already on the go, lots of jobs, lots of things that are great about it. However, me as a private individual, a ratepayer, having that on my doorstep with a risk of my home becoming uninhabitable, health risks to myself and my children, I feel unacceptable. I don't think this should go ahead. I think the core problem is there are some homes very, very close that have not been identified in this process. I would encourage anyone to ask me any questions to pull out any other information I've not covered. And I guess I'm running into 5 minutes now. So I have tried to limit it for you.
It's near 7.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Lydon. Do we have any questions, members? Councillor McGee.
I think my father worked in Northern Boy about 80 years ago, so maybe it's
a very known home.
asking question. But anyway, water aside, which hopefully will be addressed in the future, would you accept that Northern Boy to where the site will be, there is quite a bit of plantation between you and the site? Would you accept that?
Not really. It's because of the distance, it's 320 odd metres driveway to driveway. The borehole's actually closer. The borehole's actually in June Clayton's land, which is a good 200 metres closer. Yes, there's vegetation there, but the site's slightly uphill from us. Their own study actually says that the groundwater will come through and go into the aquifers. And I do worry that there's building works going on for 10 years or so here. And I'm thinking contamination from the lime and the cement, all sorts of things that I won't know about. But I think it quite likely that over a sustained period, this is going to be here for a long time. The houses are going to be here for a long time. And I think over a sustained period, it's inevitable that the water supply will be interrupted just by the nature of aquifers.
You happy with that, Councillor McGee? Okay. Do we have any further questions? No. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Lyven.
Could I show the pictures I spoke about?
Sorry, Mr. Lipman, don't have the facility to introduce pictures at this stage. You didn't give us any prior warning. It could have been part of dealt with a late submission earlier this morning, but folk can't come here.
That's fine. The reason I ask is for the fair balance, which I don't feel has been shown in the photographs presented.
But as I said, Mr. Lydon, to give you some assurance, members have visited the site in person, or at least had the opportunity to do so. So any concern you may have about such imbalance would have been addressed by them actually visiting the site. And you've also referenced Floke not being in the pictures, but as I said before, this committee actually approved the Floke development and therefore are well familiar with it. So that should hopefully give you some comfort.
Hopefully they've seen the site, as you say, and get their own perspective on the real layout of the site. It's not been shown.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Elliot Davis to come forward, and he's going to speak on behalf of Mr. Tim Harrison. Again, Mr. Davis, it's 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I'm reading this on behalf of Tim Harrison of Colstains. There are many aspects of this massive industrial development which are completely unacceptable and which others will mention, but I would like the councillors to consider the completely overwhelming visual impacts of siting 14 massive warehouses, each 88 metres long, 45 metres wide and 12 metres high in a greenfield and completely rural protected area. And although locals should matter to the planning authority, the visual impacts are in fact not only local. The so-called zone of theoretical visibility map shows the visibility of the warehousing will actually extend to well beyond 3 kilometres to, for example, communities of both Stewarton and Irvine. This has not been assessed. Now, this industrial warehousing will be sited on the gateway to East Ayrshire, adjacent to the major trunk roads of the A77 and M77, as well as a national cycleway. I respectfully suggest to you, councillors, that people will gawp at the sheer stupidity of consenting something so massive and incongruous in the rural landscape. Various viewpoints to the northeast are acknowledged by the applicant as popular visitor locations for their landscape views. The LVIA states that the warehouses will not be seen due to forestry. But a recent Freedom of Information response to Scottish Forestry shows that all the forestry north of the B764 above Kingswell is due for imminent felling. This will expose horrific industrialisation of the once beautiful landscape that our visitors come to see. What sort of advert will this be for Ayrshire, once renowned for its gentle, undulating rural landscape? It is acknowledged planting trees as mitigation will take more than 20 years to have any meaningful effect whatsoever. Many local residents who will be badly affected will be dead by that time. That is hardly effective mitigation. What about trying to disguise these massive warehouses by painting them with two-tone colours? It would be delusional to expect paint to disguise something which will be a massive and very obvious industrial blot on the rural landscape. Even the applicant's own visual impact assessment acknowledged there will be a highly adverse visual impact on the historic B-listed Kingswell property, where the only mitigation proposed will again be the two-tone paint of the warehouses and some retaining and planting trees, despite the fact that photo montages already show the overwhelming visual impacts over the top of existing mature trees. On their site visit, councillors, you should have been able to appreciate that Kingswell is clearly visible from the proposed development entrance, and it should be obvious that intervening 12-metre high buildings will not be screened despite any existing trees. How on earth could such a visual blight be considered acceptable for any property, far less a property of national importance? Unlike the nearby industrialisation of Whiteley Wind Farm, if this proposal is consented, it will be a permanent and unwelcome industrial blot on our East Ayrshire landscape. The Planning Authority considers that there is a need to site a maturation facility, a whisky maturation facility in East Ayrshire. However, apart from the much publicised economic benefits to both the applicant and the council, no convincing site-specific need has yet been demonstrated by either the applicant or the council for this particular rural site that can possibly justify the overwhelming adverse visual impacts on neighbours, local and not so local communities and Ayrshire visitors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Davis.
Oh, okay.
Sure, you were reading that statement out on behalf of Tim Harrison? Yeah, okay. So I think,
He's not here.
yeah, okay, thank you very much. So our last objector to come forward will be Mr Nick Lobnitz from the Fenwick Community Council. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I think everyone can hear me. Apologies for my nerves. I'm not used to speaking to such an esteemed and busy audience. Anyway, my name's Nick Lobnitz. I'm the chair of Fenwick Community Council, so I'm representing the views of Fenwick and its surrounding parish, which encompasses today's proposed application. Puzzled a little bit about how best to approach what I'm going to say today. For example, yesterday I took 20 minutes to effectively articulate our concerns when I was being interviewed for a radio programme, and today I've got 5 minutes. So I decided to follow the money because that's the most interesting thing, or at least it is to me anyway. So I was going to start with the jobs. When this site's fully operational, we're looking at about 40 jobs. For context, is that good? Hard to say. An average Lidl employs 30 people, so it's sort of in the sort of Lidlish territory. Silverburn, which is about the same size as the proposed development, employs about 2,000 people and annually attracts about 15 million visits each year. If we're playing fair and comparing apples to apples, so if you look at an Amazon warehouse as an alternative, Amazon warehouse would be slightly smaller than this site. That's 1,500 people, but I'd be willing to put money that you wouldn't let Amazon build a warehouse here. That would be no. Anyway, onwards, away from the jobs. I was just going to touch briefly on the Angel Share. I know that Michael's already spoken about the Angel Share, but I was going to put some money numbers on it. So you all know that it's a romantic idea that the Angels drink a little bit of the whiskey stored in the barrel. But we're talking about 500,000 barrels here, and each of those barrels has 200 litres of whiskey. So the party the Angels must have will be wild. I'd love to be there. Whiskey Associate. So getting back to the hard numbers, though, the Whiskey Association's estimating 2% loss from each of these barrels. And that's 2% per year evaporative loss. So on this site, that's about 2 million-ish litres will evaporate annually, which we've kind of already covered. There is, of course, the non-methyl volatile organic compound aspect to the pollution, but also behind that, all of that whiskey had to be made, and that requires effort from farming, from transporting, from distilling. So that also creates a needless waste of CO2 or a needless emission of CO2. Also, if we're sticking with the following the money theme, that costs Beam Suntory millions of pounds. Very roughly, I understand a litre of whiskey to cost about £1.15 to manufacture. So literally Beam Suntory are letting about 2.5 million blow out their air vents each year. Luckily for them, though, don't have to pay duty on that whiskey. Since we're there, I'm going to jump onto the duty aspect. Currently, I've sort of rounded this, but currently every litre of alcohol and whiskey pays £28 of duty to the Exchequer. For a truck leaving this site, it carries about 36,000 litres of whiskey. If that's been watered down for bottling, and if it's for the UK market, every truck that leaves, that's £400,000 in duty going to the Exchequer. There are 40 truck trips in and out of this site each day. Now, not all of those are going to go to the bottling plant, and not all of the ones going to the bottling plant are going to be exported, or most of the ones going to the bottling plant will be exported. But I would say it's comfortable to assume that the daily duty payable to the Exchequer from this site is going to be north of £1 million. Interestingly, the reason I've picked £1 million is that's roughly what I guess the rates bill to be for this site that comes back to East Ayrshire. And I'm basing that by scaling the rates bill off one of the existing maturation sites in Hurlford, and just scaling it up to match the size of this particular location. So I want to pull all those points together. You've got a site where Lidl brings more jobs to East Ayrshire than Beam Suntory will. And from this site, the wind gets more money than East Ayrshire does. And every day, London's getting more money than East Ayrshire will get in a whole year. I would say that East Ayrshire is getting very, very little in return for hosting this whiskey while it's sleeping. Now, there's no point whinging and complaining unless you do something about it. So today, everyone that has been speaking, obviously, we're all objectors, so we're all trying to persuade you that this proposal is a bad idea.
Grateful if you just sum up, please. Thanks.
I've
been generous, and it's over the 5 minutes.
Is it? I was hoping, being nervous, I'd speak faster, but it seems I'm being nervous. I'm going to speak slower. Can you bear with me for 30 seconds so I can get the important bit out? Or
yeah, when you go.
Are people going to indulge me? So I want to talk about mechanisms where East Ayrshire could properly benefit from hosting Beam Suntory. You've already got examples in the East Ayrshire's Mineral Fund and the Renewable Energy Fund. Now, I absolutely understand that these are voluntary funds and they can't form part of the planning decision or planning conditions. But for the Minerals Fund, every tonne of coal extracted, 30p goes in the pot. For wind farms, £5,000 for every megawatt annually. And both of these funds, half the money goes to the local community, half gets spread around East Ayrshire. And
Chair, sorry, I'm going to have to stop you through you, Chair, Mr. Lobnitz. I think these are new matters you're raising. The function of the committee today is to determine this application for development. If there are no policies it falls foul of, then any application falls to be granted. What you're referring to simply isn't relevant here. The developers' contributions apply properly in accordance with national and local policy to energy and similar type developments. There is nothing that can be put in place legally or competently in the back of this application or elsewhere without Scottish Government and national policy and legislative change that would allow planning authorities to exact any kind of contribution or community benefit from this particular type of proposal, not just this particular applicant, but this particular type of proposal. So on the one hand, the committee is indulging you, but on the other hand, you're taking that extra time to raise matters that are both new and not relevant. So with the greatest of respect, Mr. Lobnitz, on that basis, I would ask you to try and wind up now, because this isn't a matter that this committee could competently deal with, even if it was minded to do so, with the greatest of respect.
Okay. I completely respect your point of view, and I'm sorry for taking liberties with your indulgence. I can completely understand that what I'm talking about here can't be considered, but part of the mechanism for something like that would be if you impose a condition in Beam Suntory to actually measure how much ethanol evaporates from this site by simply monitoring the weight of the barrels as they come in and the weight of the barrels as they go out, then that provides the framework should Beam Suntory wish in the future to engage with a voluntary mechanism like this. And that would be kind of the sum up of my point. So in summation, East Ayrshire aren't really benefiting from this site. You've got the opportunity to alter that by the way you interact with Beam Suntory. And I kind of want to pose to the councillors of what type of precedent you want to set today with your decision making. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions? No, thank you very much.
No. Oh, well, I was kind of hoping for at least one, but you can't win everything.
Okay, that concludes parts 2 and 3 of the hearing. Moving on to part 4 of the hearing, and that's where we'll hear from the applicant or the agent. I'm going to ask, Mrs. Terry Porter to come forward and give 20-25 minutes.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for listening to our application, and thanks for letting us present this morning. So my name is Willie French. Work for Beam Suntory. I'm the Director for International Engineering, and joining us today is Terry Porter from Porter Planning. So myself and Terry will do most of the speaking. Behind me, representing the design team, is David Gallagher from ECDA Architects. You have Jamie Roddy from Mabbitts, and you have David Campbell from Wilgar Hunter Engineering. These guys are primarily here to take any questions that you may ask, but myself and Terry will do most of the speaking. Okay. So first of all, I'd like to give you a wee bit overview on Beam Suntory themselves. So Beam Suntory is a world leader in premium spirits, a global company with approximately 6,000 employees across more than 30 countries. We're a subsidiary of Japan's Suntory Holdings, and Scotland being very important to us. So we're the proud custodians of Scotch whisky brands. Suntory have been in Scotland for more than 20 years, owning such brands as Bowmore, Auchentoshan and Glengarry. The merger with Beam created the company Beam Suntory, and since then we also own 2 other brands called Lefroy and Ardmore. In Scotland alone, we employ over 400 people across our operations and our distilleries, again mainland and Islay for that production. We want to just underline the importance to that and the real benefit of creating jobs here in East Ayrshire. We are significantly pushing forward that, looking to develop that, and our operations being important for that strategy. And we're looking to strengthen our presence, and we're looking to work with East Ayrshire in that. I just want to draw your attention to a recent piece of news that actually, as of today, has been announced, just to kind of back up our leverage here and our benefit in terms of Beam Suntory. Today we're announcing that we are setting up our own route to market business, and that will be between Glasgow and London, and we're looking to employ over 100 people in there. So again, it's just to reiterate how important Scotland and the UK is to Beam Suntory and to support our prestige brands in here and working with obviously East Ayrshire Council. A wee bit on Scotch whisky itself. So there were some numbers mentioned earlier, but the Scotch whisky industry contributes to the UK economy as of 2022, £7.1 billion. That's a significant investment in terms of what the industry contributes. 2024 report by the Scotch Whisky Association, which we are part of, also reveals that the industry supports over 66,000 jobs in the UK, of which 41,000 are here in Scotland. So again, a big part of Scotland itself. And the Scotch whisky industry is now responsible for generating £3 in every £100 of Scotland's total gross value added, and is only second to the energy renewables sector. So again, a significant contributor in there. Another aspects I want to just make you aware of, those who aren't. So from a legality point of view, Scotch whisky must be matured in Scotland for a minimum of 3 years in oak barrels. So maturation is a significant part of the process, a significant part of the Scotch whisky industry.
Good morning, members. Over the last 18 months, we've been working on proposals for a site in East Ayrshire. As Willie says, due to legal requirement, the Scotch whisky can only be matured in Scotland, with spirit resting in oak casks for at least 3 years. Maturation facilities are a key part of these investments. As such, these plans are key to our expansion and being able to continue to support and grow jobs, reinvesting back into communities in which we operate. If progressed, the proposals will see the creation of well-designed, sustainable and modern maturation facility that will bring whisky back to East Ayrshire for the first time in over 10 years, creating much-needed jobs and supporting the long-term health of the local economy. These represent investment of circa £150 million. We've carefully designed a facility that includes employee offices, spirit supply area, tank farm, labs and blending hall, and the maturation housing itself. This equates to approximately 500,000 barrels of the whisky to be matured, the production of which will boost the domestic economy and Scottish exports. In line with our focus on sustainable practice, the facility design will see the implementation of low energy, low carbon construction methods, including sustainable urban drainage systems, and where possible, solar panels will be considered. In addition, we'll purchase green electricity through our energy provider for the site. This is electricity produced from renewable sources such as wind, solar and hydro, and this is part of our efforts to meet our goals of halving greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. We've worked hard to bring forward these proposals, which represent a major investment and importantly align with the Ayrshire growth deal. As part of the process, an extensive site search has been undertaken with consideration given to allocated sites. With specific regard to sites within East Ayrshire, none of the sites were large enough for this requirement. On this basis, a site was sought where the use would be compatible with the surrounding context and not result in unacceptable environmental impacts. We believe this is a location for a facility of this kind, given its proximity to the M77 and wider transport links. In addition, the site's location means that local residents will not be disrupted by traffic accessing the facility, minimising any disruption during and after construction, and there will be little noise impact. Consideration has also been given to other impacts of the proposal, and an extensive suite of documents show that the proposal will not result in unacceptable impact. Extensive consultation has also been undertaken as part of this process. In addition to statutory consultees, 4 consultations were carried out both in Kilmarnock and Fenwick. In Kilmarnock alone, 296 people attended over 2 weekend sessions. 2 online sessions were held and a dedicated project website was created with development information and contact information. An in-person meeting was also held with Fenwick Community Council. In total, across all of the consultation we've undertaken, only 27 people shared feedback across those events. Of that feedback, 85% of people were in support of the proposal, recognising the job and economic opportunities created by the project. And we would also reiterate comments that Fiona made in her presentation, that no statutory consultees have objected to this proposal.
We believe we've taken every opportunity to go above and beyond and listen to ensure that the development is well considered and at the heart of this has been a robust programme of engagement. This is in keeping with our values at Beam Suntory. We actively listen, we respond to requirements, and we take the views of stakeholders, advisors and statutory consultees. We did assemble a robust and a competent team advising these issues, and that's why we believe holding 4 consultation sessions as opposed to 2. We really believe that our investment will have a positive impact in the wider East Ayrshire area and aligns with the Ayrshire Growth Deal, which is one of the reasons we took the opportunity to present to a wider audience and answer their questions. We reviewed our designs as we progressed. We originally had more than 40 warehouses on this plan, that being 2 cells per warehouse. And after extensive consultation and advice, both internally and externally, we listened, and we've reduced that to the 14 buildings at 28 cells, as you've seen on the documents today. And we've recognised that that's the best thing for the site, minimising environmental impact in there. Despite the EIA not being required, we commissioned extensive surveys and reports to demonstrate this development is designed correctly and in keeping with the requirements should this have been required. We took on board concerns about visual impact, and we've incorporated screening, tree planting to ensure that the site is shielded where feasible. Beam Suntory works to embed itself into communities and to do the things the right way. We have countless examples of how we've done this before, which indicates how we would do things in East Ayrshire should we get the chance to realise this investment. For example, we are committed to playing a positive role in local economic growth and community engagement strategies. This can be evidenced by actions taken at our other sites and facilities through in-kind support and community action and volunteering. There's a collective goal of donating more than 1 million volunteer hours by 2030 globally, and I'll give you a couple of examples in that. For 6 years now at our Lefroy distillery, we have taken a day out from our normal duties to participate in a dedicated community day. Most recently, the Lefroy team donated more than 240 hours to local projects, and in collaboration with other local business contributions, we completed maintenance, paint work at Port Ellen Primary School, Bowmore Primary School, Isla Baptist Church. Over a 6-year period, we estimate that the Lefroy team alone will have donated more than 1,000 hours toward the community products. Also remaining on Isla, we've got our Bowmore distillery, and it uses energy output from the distillery to heat the local community swimming pool, mitigating a substantial heating bill. In 2022, as a brand, Bowmore donated the proceeds from record-setting auctions of 2 bespoke Bowmore whiskies to the Isla Development Initiative and the Youth Action Fund. In 2021, Beam Suntory launched the Peatland Water Sanctuary Initiative, a multi-million-pound investment in peatland restoration and watershed conservation in Scotland. The first peatland water sanctuary project was commenced near our Ardmore distillery in November 2021, and since then approximately 200 hectares have been restored. We work in collaboration with the James Hutton Institute and Forestry and Land Scotland. In November 22, Beam Suntory launched a second phased peat waterland sanctuary project in partnership with the RSPB Scotland to restore 160 hectares of peatland at the Aird Moss Reserve in East Ayrshire. Given its scale and the continued long-term investment from Beam Suntory, Kingswell Maturation Site has the potential to be a catalyst in supporting a future-proofed economy, which encourages business growth, community development and investment within East Ayrshire. The benefits of this development are communicated in the economic impact assessment. There's some specifics within that. Within East Ayrshire, the construction activity associated with the whisky maturation site will support a net direct effect of 300 one-off construction jobs, gross value added of 20 million and wages of £9 million. The ongoing net direct impact generated through the new whisky maturation site is estimated at 45 full-time employed jobs, 1.5 million in salaries and wages, and a gross value added contribution of £3.5 million per annum to the East Ayrshire economy, which will be ongoing during the operation of the site. Over 25 years, the proposed Beam Suntory whisky maturation site is estimated to generate £60 million of gross value added to the East Ayrshire economy, while supporting £25 million of local wages. This is in addition to the current 400 colleagues we already employ directly by Beam Suntory in Scotland. Our building contractors will request that a percentage of the supply chain is local to the region where feasible. We are also committed to working with top-tier contractors who have experience and a recognised track record of community and local council engagement, and this will form a key aspect of our tender process should we be successful. We welcome the opportunity to engage with the local community should this be presented to us. To be ready for this investment in East Ayrshire, we've already engaged in the recently published Ayrshire Regional Economic Strategy, and through Ayrshire Chamber, we will secure a connection to the hub, South West Scotland, to assist with the contracting of local businesses, if that is again feasible. A focus on the local-based supply chain is important to us. We have identified internally other connections, for example, on skills with Ayrshire College and other local partners in the skills and vocational educational sector, as we remain open to all ideas from the local community about ways in which we can support projects which are important to us all. Just to kind of wrap up, just want to emphasise that we're aligned internally and ready to progress in this development should we be successful in being granted this. And we as a business in Beams and Tory are really excited about the opportunity to develop our business in East Ayrshire, where we can bring jobs and align with the Ayrshire growth deal. And we welcome the opportunity to become part of the local community. I just want to take time to thank you all today for listening to our comments, and we welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. French and Mrs. Porter. Members, Councillor Friel.
Mr. French, you emphasised the thorough preparation you did for this. So what would your comment be on our first objector's allegation that the sound monitoring was flawed?
So I'll pass you over in a minute to Jamie Roddy from Mabbitts. We have done extensive surveys in here. We have left no stone unturned. We have deliberately done additional surveys where we require it. In terms of the technicalities in there, I will pass you over to Jamie Roddy from Mabbitts, who can give you his view. They are the company that we appointed, who are deemed as the technical expert in there.
Excuse me. Thank you very much. And good morning. So I'll just go through some of the points, and I think it answers a lot of the, or it responds to a lot of the points that were raised earlier on this morning. So Mabbit was commissioned to provide an assessment of potential noise impacts as a result of the proposed development upon the closest noise receptors, mainly North Drumboy and Kingswell. From the construction and operation of the proposed warehouses, we undertook a noise impact assessment. So the noise impact assessment was undertaken in compliance with British standards. I won't go through them all, but BS 7445, BS 4142, BS 5228, and undertaken by an experienced consultancy team. So the noise survey period was 5 days from Friday to Tuesday, to take into account the quieter weekend periods, which was much greater than the 24-hour monitoring period agreed with the EHO. So I feel we went above and beyond there. So identifying the monitoring locations, these were undertaken by an experienced acoustic consultant who carefully considered the placement of the proxy monitoring locations to be as representative as possible in line with standard industry methodologies and practices. So 2 locations identified in the garden area to the west of the residential property at South Drumboy Farm, and in an area towards the southern boundary of the landowner's property as close to the receptor at Kingswell as practicable. So the noise impact assessment includes assessment of both construction and operational noise. So the predicted noise levels are calculated to be well below construction noise limits as outlined in the noise impact assessment that accompanies the application. The construction traffic access has further been assessed, which results in a low impact for North Drumboy and no change assessed for Kingswell. An acoustic model of the proposed development and the sounding area was developed using sound modelling software. The software implements a standard sound prediction methodology detailed, again, International Standard 9613. The model has been used to calculate sound levels at the identified receptors, an assessment that carried out again in accordance with BS 4142 to determine if the calculated rating levels could result in a noise impact on the closest receptors. The result of the assessment was that there would be no impact on the identified receptors through operational noise, with low to very low impact from operational road traffic at North Drumboy and no change at Kingswell. In addition to the above, review of the noise impact assessment by the HO was undertaken and no concerns were raised at that point. We consider that the proposed noise conditions are appropriate.
Councillor McGee, you wanted to come in?
I just going back to the presentation and well, some of you ken the benefits of whisky, we drink enough of it. I'm just wondering, one of the biggest concerns of any development, whether it's sources or industry, is during the construction period. And this construction period might last for some time because you're not going to develop the site in one go, and it's going to be phased. So I think it was Mr. Lydon, Northern Boy, raised the issue that the borehole, the water supply and the distance. So during construction, which is going to be over a lengthy period of time, what reassurances could you give to the people that need that water supply? And if something untoward was to happen in the meantime, because accidents do happen. So is there something that you can put in place to make sure that that is mitigated? And if something did go wrong, that some remedy would put in place more or less as soon as you could? Thank you.
Thanks for your question. What I would say there is, through engagement with East Ayrshire Council, we've got questions in regards to the private water supplies, in regards to the contamination of those private water supplies. And I'll pass you over in a second to David Campbell, who represents Wilgar Hunters, who are our civil and structural engineering partner. We did carry out extensive research into that. We did carry out reports on 2 occasions. We get 2 different requests, and we actually subsequently looked at that. We will come up with a process. We have been asked for this as well. We will come up with a strategy that determines that we won't contaminate, and we will come up with a strategy where if there is any inadvertent, unlikely event, we will respond to that. So by way of a way of mitigating that. But I'll pass you over to David Campbell, who represents this area, to give you some assurances on the report and some of the extensive works that we have done around this area.
Right, thanks, Willie. Just to pick up on the point that you made there, and it's quite a valid point about construction. One of the things that we are in the process of organising with Statute Council TCPA is a construction car licence. So that's a construction phase car licence. And that is specifically to mitigate contamination through the construction of the water environment. Things are put in place there in terms of temporary suds and things like that. So we manage runoff coming off the site. It's quite a rigorous process. It's a licence process we need to go through, and we do take that quite seriously.
Just to come back in there. Again, by way of our contingency strategy, we will do upfront monitoring, we will do continuous monitoring through the construction phase to make sure that there is no contamination relevant. We are also very welcome to work with the neighbours. We are happy with that. Again, we can involve them in that strategy, we can involve them in that testing to ensure that they are there. But please be assured that we will have a contingency arrangement in place should there be any contamination, which we see is very, very unlikely. But we will have monitoring during the phases of construction to obviously do that. And we will sample from any local boreholes or private water supplies as part of that strategy.
Thank you. Councillor McGee, you want to come back? No,
I always want to come back in, but that they've answered the question. The one comment I would make, you know, during some constructions, and that does every application is going to be taking its merit. I understand that. But we do have cases where water runoff, again, it's coming onto main roads or sites in Stuart, etc., where we've had lots of complaints. So, and I totally accept what you're saying, Tammy, and the reassurance you're giving your nearby neighbours. But hopefully we can put something in place that ensures that will happen. Thank you.
Chair, I wonder if I might, I think it would hopefully benefit members and be of assistance just to seek a wee bit more clarification, because the question was around Mr Lydon's concerns about his water supply that was answered. However, Dr Connor was heard to raise issues around the assessment of the flood risk submitted both by the applicant and our treatment of that. Officers will respond to any concerns or queries about the council's view of it, but it may be helpful if the applicant and colleagues there, their colleagues there, sorry, could maybe just address the points made by Dr Connor around particularly the off-site flooding potential and the treatment of that up to this point, just to hopefully provide some assurance to all present.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. Thanks for the question again. Again, back to the point of there's been extensive surveys, but I'll pass you over to our appointed expert in that area. Again, David Campbell, please, can you respond to that?
Aye, thank you. Yes, we've obviously done a flood risk assessment which takes into account all the relative guidance and policies. That considers a lot of the elements that's been talked about. One of the biggest contributors that's been discussed or raised was about the extent of hard standing. That's actually managed on site. So what we do is we put in we've got extensive swale systems adjacent to the roads, adjacent to the buildings, including underground pipes. Those go to the wetland and to the surface water ponds. The software we use for that is quite complex, and actually it analyses all of the storm events and over a series of minutes. So it's from 0 up to 60-minute storms. It's summer storms, it's winter storms. We've applied climate change figures to that as well. So I think we're about 41% climate change. And that is analysed all the way up to the 1 in 200-year event. All with that controlling the surface water runoff coming into the Kingswells burn. And what we're trying to do there is actually stop the flooding going downstream by holding it on site at the exact same rate as would naturally go on site.
Chair, just in terms of the issues that have been raised, and I think just to pause here, again, as I said earlier, in terms of process, the bigger the application, the more issues they tend to raise. I just want to remind all parties present that all submissions and representations received are reported fully within the report. That's why this is a 257-page report and all matters are addressed. The purpose of the hearing element is to allow those who wish to be heard in support of the submission as already reported. But as we pointed out at the earlier stage of the hearing, within the overall hearing process, as you can now see, the applicant also have the opportunity to be asked or to address these issues and do officers at the end. So just to try and assure those who are concerned about the paucity of the time they had, it's only a small part of the process, and a balance needs to be struck between the overall need of the committee to address all parts, and in recognition this is not a public local inquiry, it is a quasi-judicial hearing. And I would also just point out that those present have listened to all those who have been heard to date. I would ask those who have been heard to date to extend the same courtesy to those now who are addressing the committee, if that's okay through you, Chair. And again, to assist members in terms of the points that were raised by those who have been heard today, the other point that was raised, I think, that would merit a comment from the applicant was that raised by Mrs Roberts around the site selection. And again, I think it would benefit the committee to hear a little bit from the applicant as to why this particular site was considered suitable for their needs. Thank you.
So, yeah, I can answer that in terms of site selection. So, prior to looking at the site within East Ayrshire Council, we carried out an extensive search of Scotland itself in terms of finding a site that was suitable for our undertaking. We looked at emerging business, industrial allocations with and out with East Ayrshire. These were discounted due to none of the sites that we found within East Ayrshire to be suitable for the requirement. In terms of location, some were not deemed sufficient due to the road connections, the strategic network. Others were extremely close to residential properties, which could create issues because this site ultimately will become an upper tier coma site. On that basis, no suitable alternative allocated site was identified. We also looked out west, as I say, East Ayrshire, and again, the same rationale was there. With regards to the application site, the surrounding context comprises other developments such as North Drumboy Quarry, Winleys Farms, Muirhead Plant Hire, Cameron Plant Hire, and other instances of built developments. The proposal was viewed within the environment of a landscape visual impact assessment, and it accompanies the planning application and demonstrates the proposal is compatible with the surrounding context. We believe the proposed land use is acceptable and complies with the relevant policies, and the proposed development will contribute to the vision and aims of the Ayrshire Growth Deal and associated regional economic strategy. And as a result, we obviously submitted a planning application, and in doing so, we believe the principles of the development and the application site are compliant with the relevant policy in there as well. So rest assured, we did carry out extensive search through initial engagement with East Ayrshire Council. We then took the sites that were proposed and we reviewed them as well, and we fed back through the application on the reasons why we didn't think those were suitable.
Thank you. Councillor Maitland, you wanted to ask a question?
It was, thank you, Chair. It was going back to the previous point Dr. Connor raised about the accumulated flood risk, and she felt that hadn't been addressed, and I would just like to put that question to the gentleman who answered earlier. Thank you.
I think the report which has been submitted, both the flood risk assessment and the drainage strategy report which accompanied the submission, addresses those points in particular. As I said earlier, the whole point of the development and the drainage strategy in particular is to mimic the existing runoff, so therefore not put excessive flow into the watercourse, which would then contribute to the downstream flooding.
You happy with that? Yeah. Councillor Filson. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Just on Michael Lydon's, one of the points he made, what would happen in an emergency if there was a fire or explosion? What kind of systems you got in place on site to deal with that?
Yeah, thanks for your question again. So for those that realise the industry, realise the scale of the application, we are governed under very, very strict regulation. We are governed by HSE, we're governed by SEPA, as well as our internal standards, which require us to have really high-end, high-technology requirements in there. I'll give you some reassurances in there. We have, starting with each of these warehouses, has a separate runoff, which is out with the normal surface runoff. It runs to a containment system that is a contained system that contains any inadvertent, unlikely spillage of flammable liquid in there. Within the warehouses themselves, we have a significant sprinkler system that is designed. There will be, and these are in compliance with all regulation. We have additional tanks in there due to the volume of water, due to the density of the water, distinctly designed to cope with any fire within a maturation warehouse where there's cask and liquid storage. Again, so you've got sprinkler protection, we've got detection in there, we've got separate runoffs, we've got containment chambers. We, being an upper tier coma eventually, we are required to submit what they call a hazardous substance consent. That is a system and approval that comes directly from the HSE themselves, and this site development will be approved under that before we can then store that. So my reassurance back to the relevant party is that we are under strict conditions. We actually go above and beyond that with our internal standards. Beam Suntory, being a global business, has great experience in this. We will apply systems that are above what legislation requires. So please be assured that fire actual detection, fire extinguishing, as well as runoff containment strategy is a big part of this application. We do not foresee that to be a significant risk based upon that. I would also refer back to the history within the industry. There is not recognised significant fire issues within the industry going back decades because of these type of strategies, because of fire strategy, because of the strict guidelines that we have to adhere to.
Thanks, Mr. Fence.
Thank you. Councillor McGee, you want to ask a question?
Just my last couple of questions. If the application was approved, now I just want to touch on the Angel Share first of all. The kind of romantic notion is the angels are having a wee party with it, but it's a well-known fact if you crack open a bottle of Aberlour, you can hear the angels singing if you listen close enough. But in the more serious point, if the application was to go ahead, is there some monitoring that would be put in place? And regarding the black mould issue, is there something that can be done in the event somebody nearby evidenced that taking place. And my other point was, obviously, it's going to be warehouses containing a valuable asset to Her Majesty's government, not only Beam Centauri and the lighting. So here we have, out in the middle of the country, a big site. Would the lighting be well mitigated so as it wasn't obtrusive? Thank you.
Again, thanks for your question. I'll try and answer them one at a time. So regarding the evaporation losses, the Angel Share, as it's affectionately known. So based on available evidence, there's no health or environmental impacts that can be found to object to the maturation of Scotch whisky in Scotland or even East Ayrshire. In fact, in August, the Scottish Government published a report on the emissions from the Scotch whisky maturation itself. For decades now, Scotch whisky has been maturing at urban and rural sites throughout the country. And while the emissions of ethanol vary from place to place, they disperse very rapidly and are therefore not considered harmful. This was the Scottish Government's view ahead of the report and has since been confirmed by that report. And again, I would refer back to the report that was recently published by the Scottish Government. I would also refer back to the MSP, Mary McCallan, who was then the Minister for Environment. And on the 9th of August 2021, the statement was made that the main release to air from Scotch whisky maturation is the fugitive emissions of ethanol, which disperses very quickly in the atmosphere and is not considered to be harmful to human health through this exposure route. Regarding monitoring the evaporation losses, it's not currently applicable in the industry. We don't do it. The industry very much is open, it's transparent. We as a business in Beam Centauri are a big supporter, a big member of what they call the Scotch Whisky Association. Scotch Whisky Association governs us in terms of that, and the Scotch Whisky Association is in writing talking about 2% evaporation losses. We acknowledge that, we know that. That's what the industry releases through cask. There is also, and within the industry itself, there is a belief that this adds to the flavour, adds to what Scotch whisky becomes, i.e. it's a natural process and it is part of that. So to answer that question directly, we don't have any intention of putting monitoring in. It's not readily available within the industry just now, technology-wise, and it's certainly not used within the industry just now. We are very open to working collectively in terms of the conditions within the policy itself. But we are open and honest with that as part of that Scotch whisky industry. I'll come on to the kind of what they call the microflora. So what people call the kind of mould. It's so again our business and part of our distilleries, again back to the point about fire, we monitor to the highest safety standards. We work to that, and we try and positively impact communities where we are. There is a terminology used in blackling. It's actually a naturally occurring, what they call a microflora, and it may result in varying degrees of discoloration or housing or other structures that are nearby. It's present around the world in different locations, and it can be found both near distilleries and it's also been found out with distilleries. So again, it's a naturally occurring fungi, a microflora. And it's got no direct link that's been associated yet back to the whisky making process. Also, it's been referred to, it's named in the Scottish Government report, there is research carried out by Indiana State Department, and again, it deems that it does not find any reports of health risks for this short or long-term exposure. Other point just to note is in Scotland, those in Ayrshire, in Scotland as well, in the west of Scotland, again, the conditions in Scotland, especially in the west, they create ideal conditions for this fungal growth. And this is due to the combination of cool summers, mild winter and frequent rainfalls. So what I would summarise is we don't believe it's harmful. Again, there's no direct link back to the industry itself, but we also acknowledge that we're willing to work with the parties relevant in this.
Chair, through you just in that one, just to help members with that. You've heard from the applicant in that, from the planning authority's position. This matter is set out, both matters are set out in terms of the black mould and in terms of the other concern about harmful particulates. The officers, the service, and within the report as set out in full detail, we have fully considered these matters. We have given proper and due consideration to whether or not it would be appropriate and or competent to have added an additional condition requiring such monitoring of the Angels share, and the conclusion of the assessment was we are not in a position to propose or recommend such additional conditioning, because based on all information, including the Scottish Government report and everything else contained within the report in front of you, there is insufficient information to support that, and it therefore wouldn't have met the legal test. So it has been absolutely considered. With regard to the black mould, you've heard what the applicants had to say. That is not, I think, disputed to be a particularly health issue, because it is in particular urban areas. And if any member wants first-hand experience, if you want to go to the Crooked Home Depot, you will find this black mould on the roof of the Crooked Home Depot following the development of the maturation plant in Hurlford, and that also continues to be monitored. In relation to the other matter, we've given it full consideration. There is more than one point of view in the matter. The Planning Authority's view has been fully assessed and fully set out within the report, and informs our judgment and our assessment that it would not have been appropriate or competent to have added an additional condition. Whatever the desirability of that, it wouldn't have been appropriate and competent to have added an additional condition requiring simply the measuring of the measure of the Angel share or the amount of escape. So it has been duly considered, and it wasn't appropriate to condition that.
Thanks. I think Councillor McGee also asked about the lighting. Yep.
Okay, again, just to address the third point. So again, lighting obviously is part of the site as a requirement. So we'll need lighting installed strictly for pathways, roadways, vehicle parking, etc., where we've got cycle bays, etc., to do that. The intent of the lighting is to provide lighting that again is suitable for the rural location, that provides light directly onto the required area for a health and safety point of view. And again, it will be obviously mitigated where we can. No lights pointing in a not upwards direction, again, pointing directly onto the point of application. We also considered where lighting will be switched off during dark hours, if you like. So all external lighting will be controlled under what we would call a building management system, a control system that allows us to switch that off when the site is unoccupied during dwell hours, if you like. So what we're saying here is we will switch off between, say, the hours of 10, 11 o'clock at night and 7 in the morning, except for lighting that we require for a security point of view. So that may be on the front of a warehouse, at a door, for that security. As you rightly call out, there's a significant amount of whisky stored here. We need lighting for certain security applications, but normal access lighting for roadways, etc., we will turn down at night time, switch off, and they will only be operational during normal operating hours of the site.
Members, do you have any further questions? No, don't see anybody online either. So at this point, that's the end of the formal part of the hearing. Thank you very much. I'm just asking everybody to return to the public gallery.
Thank you very much for taking our questions. Thank you.
At this stage, we go on to the planning department and they will clarify any points raised during the hearing.
Chair, maybe just before Fiona comes in there, on that point, at stage 6 of the hearing, just given the reports in my name, as is often highlighted, I would just stress again to all present that the function of the Planning Authority and the Planning Service is to deal and assess and present reports and make decisions based on the merits of applications. We do not take sides. We do not favour applicants. We do not favour objectors. We take the issues. Sometimes we're in agreement with objectors. Sometimes we're in agreement with applicants on those issues. But the Planning Authority's position is one of neutrality, and we are obliged, as we do, and we absolutely strive to do, is to deal with applications on their merits and only with regard to relevant and material considerations. With that in hand, a number of matters were raised by objectors. I think they've been addressed by the applicant. If members wish any more from officers, then that would be absolutely fair if there's any particular points. The one point I would ask would be that my colleague Carol from Environmental Health at some point in this stage does address members from the environmental health perspective on the points made by Mr Davis in relation to the acoustic report. I think it's important that members are satisfied. Some statements were made about the appropriateness and competence of that part of the process, and I think it's important that everybody present, but certainly the members, before you make a decision, are happy in that. So I would ask Carol just to confirm the environmental health position in respect of the additional report submitted by Mr Davis, and then invite Fiona, if there's any other particular points, or David, to address from a planning perspective thereafter, Chair, if you don't mind. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm aware we've just had a long hearing. Some of the members I mean a 5-minute comfort break. So could we do a summary?
It's like, Chair, you're in your hands. If you want to call the comfort break, then
Yeah, I think we just call it just now, actually, but then come back. So
stop the recording, have you? How long? 10 minutes?